Washington mornings on the Mall.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
6:37 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson with you. We've got KT McFarland coming up about an hour from now. We'll get into the latest on what happened at the embassies in Cairo and Libya yesterday. We have some State Department officials who were killed in these attacks.
Yeah, an ambassador has been killed. A U.S. ambassador has been killed in Libya. New developments are just breaking, so we'll be asking her about that.
KT coming up about an hour from now. Pleased to have Tom Bevan on the line, executive editor of RealClearPolitics.com, the place to go if you're a political junkie. He's also author of the eBook Election 2012, A Time for Choosing. Tom, good to have you back on the program.
Great to be with you.
All right, so we haven't talked to you since the conventions. What was there a bump for the president out of the DNC?
There was. He's actually, Romney actually was trailing. If we go back to the day before he picked Paul Ryan, he was trailing in the Real Clear Politics national average by almost 5 points.
Mm-hmm.
He received a bump sort of over the next 2 weeks through his convention to the point where Romney and Ryan actually drew to a dead-even tie, 46.8% each, at the end of their convention.
So it was a slow and steady bump.
It was a slow and steady build, correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't, terribly dramatic. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he picked Paul Ryan a little bit early, and there was some enthusiasm for the ticket. But President Obama has definitely received a bump coming out of his convention. He's back up by about 3.5 points in the Real Clear Politics average right now. The question is, how long is this bump going to last? How big is it going to get, and how long is it going to last? We still are going to be, getting more polls here over the next couple of days, which will make the picture a little bit clearer.
We're starting to see, though, some polls that are showing pretty large disparities. I mean, the ABC Washington Post poll that came out yesterday with likely voters had it only Obama up by 1. Gallup had it Obama up by 6. I think that CNN poll had Obama up by 6 as well. So how do we judge the difference between these polls?
Well, there's usually, if you look at that's why we use the Real Clear Politics average, because there's often a disparity among various polling operations, because polling is more of an art than a science. It depends on how you ask the questions. It depends on the screens that you use. It depends on what order the questions come in, and you can receive. And it obviously depends on the sample that you use, how you weight things to determine how these pollsters think, what they think the electorate is going to look like in November. And so, yeah, we do have, right now we've got 5 different polls that vary, as you said, anywhere from an Obama lead of 1 point to an Obama lead of 6 points. So I think overall, we know, taking all this into account, we know that Obama has a smallish lead coming out of his convention. Now, is this race over, as some have suggested, and that Romney's way behind and needs some sort of game change moment here? I don't think so. I don't think the conventions changed the fundamental dynamics of this race. It was close leading into the conventions. It's going to be close, I think, when things all get settled down. The economy is obviously still going to be the main issue, although, as we're seeing this morning, certainly events can and probably will intervene. And what's going on right now in Egypt and Libya certainly is not good news for the president.
Just one other thing about the polls, and that is that many of the polls are still registered voters, but it does seem to always be a little tighter when you get into the likely voters. More and more polls will move toward the likely voter scenario, won't they, in the days ahead?
Yeah, and actually, of the 5 polls that we have, only two of them are registered voters. 3 of them are likely voters. So people have already started switching over to the likely voter model. You will see now, Brian, as you said, the Washington Post, for example, yesterday produced 2 numbers. They produced your registered voter number and your likely voter number, and that's where some of the confusion comes in, because the registered voter number in the Washington Post poll, like you said, was 6 points, 50 to 44. When you put that tighter screen on there, you get a 49-48 Obama 1-point lead. And so it depends on how the media actually reports these different numbers, because you oftentimes will get the media reporting the registered voter number and suggesting that Obama has more of a lead than he actually has. So that's one thing for your listeners to take into account. We only use, whenever there's a poll that presents both numbers, we only use the likely voter number, because historically that's the more accurate.
But I think the president must be happy about the approval numbers, because we've seen a couple of them now where he's actually over 50% in approval, and a lot of people say, look at approval rating when it comes to whether or not a president's going to be reelected or not.
Yeah, definitely. Because it makes common sense. I mean, if he's the leader, and if you don't think the leader's doing a good job, a majority of the country doesn't, then they're going to vote for somebody else, and that's why that 50% approval number is sort of seen as a magic marker to keep an eye on. And you're right. I mean, his approval rating, he's received a bounce there as well. He had been sort of in the mid-40s, sort of bumping along for the last 6 months or so. And he's now up approaching the 50% mark. I think 3 of the polls that we have in the Real Clear Politics average have him at 50 or over 50, just by a point or two. So he's sort of right on the bubble as we speak. Again, we'll see if that continues to rise or if that recedes back, settles back down to where it was before the conventions. As we head into, obviously, we're in the final sprint, and with the debates coming up, there could be more twists and turns ahead.
Let's talk about the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we've been talking about this on this program for some time now. There hasn't been a lot of national focus on it, but Virgil Goode is going to be, it looks like, on the ballot in Virginia, and it looks like, there's a chance he could pull votes away from Romney and could be, the deciding factor in a key, absolute crucial battleground state. What do you think about the Virgil Goode situation, and why don't we have better numbers about that? I'm surprised that the pollsters aren't asking that question.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying I agree with you. I think Virginia is going to be key for both campaigns. Certainly, the Romney folks need to win Virginia. They cannot afford to lose it. And it's exceedingly tight right now. Romney's got a lead of less than 1%. In the RCP average for Virginia. They're 4 polls out, he's leading in 2 of them. One of them's tied, and one of them has Obama up. So I do think the Virgil Goode thing could, it's tough to say, Brian. You never know. I mean, we get these. We've seen elections where people end up polling higher, third candidate polling. I'll go back to, let's say, New Jersey governor race. There was a third party candidate in that race as well. Who at one point was polling in double digits, but at the end, people feel like they're going to be wasting their vote.
Yeah, they don't want to throw it away.
Exactly. And so you have third-party candidates tend to poll poorly on election day for that reason alone. So, but again, in a race where it's less than 1%, could come down to a few thousand votes. It could make a difference.
But just to not to just wear this out, but in this particular election, I get the sense that there are a great number of voters out there who are just sort of like, a pox on everyone. I am so tired of the Republicans, and I'm so tired of the Democrats, that I really do want to vote for somebody else.
I definitely think there is that sentiment out there in the country that neither party is sort of addressing their needs. Washington isn't working for sort of the, middle America, the average voter. At the same time, though, I'm not sure that how that translates necessarily into votes, because again, in the end, that it is a wasted vote. I mean, you're voting for someone who's clearly will not win in Virginia, let alone win the presidency.
Right.
So, we saw this with Ralph Nader in his second run.
Yeah.
We've seen it with some other candidates. It just never amounts to much in the end.
Well, Virgil Goode said he's going to win Virginia, so he believes.
Okay.
All right, Tom. Good to have you on as always. We appreciate it. RealClearPolitics.com, the place to go. You can also check out his ebook, Election 2012: A Time for Choosing.